Hello everybody, welcome to our YouTube channel. This video is part of a series of videos wherein we share some tips and tricks to help you crack the common question types that occur in bank exams. Okay, today's topic is reading comprehension with a focus on the clerical prelim exams. But before we move on to today's topic, we have a request. Do subscribe to our YouTube channel, Time for Bank Exams, and do not forget to press the bell icon so that you get all our notifications on time. Spreading knowledge is a wonderful thing, so do share these videos with all your friends and relatives who may be preparing for these bank exams. Okay. Now, back to today's topic, reading comprehension. Reading comprehension, as you know, is an integral part of almost all bank exams. In the clerical prelim exams, you can expect anything between 5 to 10 questions on reading comprehension depending on your slot, right? Now, reading comprehension is an area many students are scared of or do not want to attempt. The reason being they feel all the other questions are very short, and when it comes to reading comprehension, we have to read and understand so much text and it takes a lot of time. At the end of it, we do not know whether we will be able to get the answers right. So we are wasting a lot of time. It is very risky, etc. But dear students, you should remember one thing. Reading comprehension is the only section where the answers are directly given to you. Am I right? Which other section gives you the answers? Here, the answers are there for you to pick. They are there in the passage. All you need to do is go to the passage and check carefully and make the right inference, right? So, it is not really a very difficult question type, and if you know how to attempt this section properly, it can be a very scoring section right away. From one passage, you get 5 to 10 questions, right? At one shot, you get so many questions and so many marks. The trick here is, though I said the answers are given to you, they may not be given in a very, very direct manner, unlike in school level examinations. So, in school level reading comprehension exams, we all know many of us would just look at the question and try to pick the answer from the passage, right? Very rarely do students ever bother to read the entire passage. That is because the questions are very direct and straightforward. But when it comes to the higher level competitive exams like bank exams, there may be a few direct questions here and there, but majority of the questions require you to make inferences. What do we mean by inference? Now, for example, let's say there is a story, and in the story, one sentence says, Alice was sitting in the garden wearing a blue dress. In a school level exam, the question will be what is the color of Alice's outfit, and the options will be red, blue, yellow, orange. So you look at the question, what is the color? Okay, Alice color, there, blue. Got it. We don't need to know why Alice was sitting in the garden, who was she? We don't need to know anything at all. If the same question were to appear in a higher level competitive exam, the question would be the same, what is the color of Alice's outfit? But the options would be dark blue, light blue, bright blue, faded blue. And nowhere else would the color of Alice's dress be mentioned in the passage. So then what do? Each one of us would start imagining, oh, you know, this sentence says this, so it must be bright blue or light blue. But when we look at the answer, we see that our thoughts were not on track, right? So, in order to get the answer right for such questions, we need to understand the author's tone properly. We need to understand the author's purpose in writing the passage. We also need to understand the central idea of the passage, right? There are also some other questions which ask you what is the main idea of the passage or suggest a suitable title for the passage. For all these questions, you just cannot pick the answer from anywhere. You need to understand the passage properly. Even questions which look very direct may involve some amount of inference because the options may be close. Okay, that is why we suggest that you read the entire passage thoroughly before attempting the questions. Now, when we say read the passage thoroughly, the other challenge is reading speed, right? You cannot afford to look at each and every detail while reading. You will have to read fast. So, you need a good reading speed. You need a reading speed of at least 200 words per minute in order to successfully attempt these questions within the limited amount of time that you have. So, how do you do that? Well, the mistake many of us make is we feel that we need to spend a lot of time understanding each and every word in the passage. And many students ask us, what do we do to remember the passage? When we read the passage, as we reach the end of the passage, we cannot remember what we read in the beginning. Then we have to go back and look for those details and we waste a lot of time. What do we do? Dear students, here what we need is not memory, but a little bit of smartness or strategy. Okay? When you read the passage initially, do not focus on little details like data, numbers, figures, names. Don't focus on all these things. Don't try to learn anything by heart. Okay? Skim over these details. Okay? You may have heard of skimming. Skim over these details, but try to understand what is the author saying in the passage. In each paragraph, what is the central idea? Once you understand that, quickly run through the passage. Then, when you answer each question, you can go back to the relevant part of the passage and check for the details. That is the correct way to do this. So, your initial reading becomes very quick. See, reading the passage is very important. Yes, but you do not get any marks for reading the passage, right? You get the marks only for answering the question. So, if you spend all your time in reading the passage, you might end up getting lost and then hurrying up while answering the questions, and then what will happen? You will get negative marks. So, a balance of speed and accuracy is important. For that, you have to keep practicing. Okay. Now, let us quickly take a look at a reading comprehension passage. First, if we have time, we will look at one more. Okay. So that I can demonstrate some of these things that I just mentioned, like skimming over the details, etc. Okay. Yeah. So let us look at this first passage here. What is the polar vortex? Now, when you see such a passage, some of you will get stuck there. Oh my God, polar vortex. What is it? I don't know. So I will leave this passage. Dear students, remember one very, very important point. Okay? Nothing in the passage will require you to have subject knowledge. That is, there won't be even a single question which involves subject knowledge. You are not expected to have any subject knowledge in any subject. If they are talking about polar vortex, they will explain the concept in the passage. So do not get scared when you see technical terms, scientific terms, economics terms, all these things. Okay. Yeah. So what is the polar vortex? As its name suggests, the polar vortex is found around the North Pole. Okay. It is a band of strong winds high up in the atmosphere, okay, that keeps bitterly cold air locked around the Arctic region. Fine. When they ask a question on the definition of polar vortex, you can come back and check. At this point, what you need to remember is the definition is in the first para. That much you remember. Okay, don't worry, don't sit and try to learn, okay, it is a band of strong winds, let me understand. No, you have approximately got an idea, move on. Okay. This circulation isn't considered a single storm or even a weather pattern as such. Why is it affecting the US? Occasionally, the vortex can become distorted and meander farther south than normal. Okay, so there is a question, why is it affecting the US? And probably we have the answer. But now they are talking of the movement, the occasional movement of the polar vortex downwards, right? Further south. Okay, meander is to move in a zigzag or winding fashion. The phenomenon became widely known to Americans during a particularly frigid spell. Frigid is cold spell. In 2014, when the media first started using the term polar vortex. It was also, so please remember that 2014 is when the media started using this term. It was also a factor in the bomb cyclone that battered the US East Coast last year. Okay, so you just need to remember the things that are mentioned in the first para at this point. Next, this time the polar vortex has broken in two, bringing the coldest conditions in decades to the Midwest US. So what has happened? Yes, this is what has created the coldest conditions ever. Okay. On Wednesday, Chicago was 10 degrees Fahrenheit colder than Antarctica. Okay. At the moment, the vortex looks like two swirling blobs of cold air, one settled over North America, the other over Eurasia. Okay. It has split into two, we saw, and one part is over the continent of North America. The other part is over Eurasia. Said Jennifer Francis, okay, we don't need to read her whole name and designation. We have to skim through all these things. It split up when there are sudden stratospheric warming. That is when it splits up. Stratospheric warming results in the splitting up of this polar vortex. Is this weather event linked to climate change? Studies have pointed to a recent increase in instances where the polar vortex has bulged down into heavily populated areas. Scientists are gaining a better understanding of why this is happening. So now it is going down into heavily populated areas. Okay. With many identifying climate change as an influence. So the question is polar vortex linked to climate change? And here we get a hint that it may be probably linked to climate change, right? There is some evidence that the jet stream, a meandering air current that flows over North America and Europe, is slowing and becoming wavier as the planet warms. The jet stream interacts with the polar vortex, helping bring numbing temperatures further south. Okay, so here there is a phenomenon mentioned about a jet stream. We do not have time to get into the details of this and understand it, but we know that it is slowing and it is becoming wavier, some changes in its movement. We will come back and check when there is a question about this. The jet stream interacts, yeah, okay, we read that. Scientists also point to a complex sequence of events, okay, involving sea ice, which is rapidly diminishing in the Arctic. So, we know that melting ice caps, etc. is related to climate change. Even if you don't know that, it's fine. Just understand that there is a sequence of events, a series of events related to diminishing sea ice. Okay. As the ice retreats, summertime heat is absorbed by the dark ocean that lies underneath. This heat is released into the atmosphere during winter, spurring winds that can disrupt the polar vortex. So, another phenomenon related to the polar vortex. Spurring is triggering or prompting, provoking, etc. We aren't entirely there yet, but there is more and more support for this concept. It's a new and developing hot research topic. Okay, so this whole concept that has been mentioned in the previous para. Doesn't global warming mean everywhere should be warm? Okay, now we saw that the temperature is actually falling here. Some places have become much colder. So that's why the question arises, doesn't global warming refer to warming universally? Well, Donald Trump certainly thinks so. In coming days, expect it to get even colder. People can't last outside even for minutes. The former US president once tweeted, what the hell is going on with global warming? SIC there refers to a quotation. It means that the president has been quoted, the former president has been quoted exactly. That's what that means. Please come back fast. We need you. Okay. So, when it got colder, Donald Trump, this was a very well-known statement made by him that it's getting cold and why are you talking about global warming? Okay, that's the reference here. Scientists were quick to point out climate change's role in allowing Arctic air to flow south, as well as to remind the president that winters still exist. So, global warming does not mean that winters disappear, and also all these phenomena result in a variety of, in a wide range of climate changes. Okay. A localized, albeit large, cold snap isn't representative of the rest of the planet. Okay. Albeit means though. Okay. As Australians currently sweltering in searing record heat of more than 46 degrees Celsius or 114 Fahrenheit will be well aware of. So, that's what in climate change, there can be warming and cooling. That is what they're talking about. Some places are getting colder, but then Australia is getting hotter. The past 4 years have been the hottest on record for the globe. In the US, record-breaking high temperatures are outnumbering record lows by a ratio of 2:1. Okay, so there are ups and downs, and this is all part of climate change. Research suggests this ratio will expand to 16 heat records for every cold record set if the US warms by 3 degrees this century. Okay, so here what we are saying is the ratio of high temperatures to low temperatures is now 2:1, but it might become 16:1 if the US warms by 3 degrees Celsius this century, which is likely unless greenhouse gases are severely curtailed. Curtailed means limited, controlled. Trump's repeated tweets mocking climate science when the temperature drops are ridiculous in a word, said Francis. He cares not to understand. It is the only explanation. Okay. So, Donald Trump is infamous for his anti-climate change stand. But here they are talking about climate change being real. And we saw that there is a phenomenon called polar vortex, and we read some details about it that has been presented in this passage in the context of climate change. That is what we saw, right? So far, it is a lengthy passage. So, one more paragraph. See, like I told you earlier, okay, do not bother to understand the little details here. You just need to quickly get the overall flow of the passage, and do not get scared when you see the length of the passage. Now we are reading it slowly. When you read in the exam, run through it, just getting the map of the passage, what lies where, and the overall idea. The unusually cold weather in the hill states of North India and parts of the plains, including the national capital, has been indirectly caused by the polar vortex. So now we are talking of India. Okay, this also has been indirectly caused by this phenomenon that usually spins over the North Pole and is currently sweeping across large parts of the US and Canada, that is pushing various weather systems downwards. Okay, so these changes are happening in the north, but because of this, various weather changes are being pushed downwards. That's why India is also being affected. There is no direct relationship between the polar vortex and Indian weather, but the Arctic winds are pushing various weather systems, including the western disturbance, downwards. It has indirectly resulted in severe and extended winters. So indirectly, this is what is happening. The intensity and frequency of western disturbance have also increased. See, we don't need to understand what exactly is western disturbance. Whatever is mentioned in the passage is enough. Mahesh Palavat, Vice President of Meteorology, said, noting that frequency and intensity of the western disturbances were very high this time around, he said India has already witnessed 6 such instances so far, which have resulted in heavy to moderate snowfall. So whatever this phenomenon is, western disturbances, that has led to heavy snowfall in India. Okay, so that is it about the polar vortex, climate change and the impact of polar vortex all over the world. Now let us look at the questions. Okay. First question, which of the following is or are true according to the passage? Okay, so the media was the first to use the term polar vortex. Okay, that is vortex there. Yes, we saw that the media first used this term in 2014. We can infer that that was the first ever usage of this term, right? The jet stream helps numb the temperature. If you do not remember these things, please go back and check. Okay, now I'm not going to each and every part and showing you, but here you can see that in this part about jet stream, it says it brings numbing temperatures further south, right? So we can see that jet stream helps numb the temperature. The intensity and frequency of western disturbance have decreased. We just saw in the last para that the intensity and frequency of this phenomenon have increased. So this is wrong. All the 3 are correct. No, all the 3 are not correct. 1 and 2 are correct. So option 5 is the right answer. See, we quickly managed to get the answer to this question, didn't we? Next question. Choose the word which is the antonym of the word printed in bold as used in the 3rd para of the passage. If you are not sure about the meaning, okay, then you have to go back and check. Okay, antonym means opposite, right? So spurring means pushing. Okay, so what is the antonym of pushing? To push is to hurry up something or to provoke something. Let us look for the antonym. The first word is turning, that is unrelated. Slowing, pushing, slowing, correct? Let us look at the other options. Peering, to peer is to peep and take a look. So that does not make sense. Hurrying, hurrying can be a synonym of spurring. And grooming, grooming, you know what it means, right? To tidy up something or tidy up yourself. So all these words are unrelated except slowing, which is the antonym of spurring. Okay, fine. The media first started using the term polar vortex when? When did it start using it? In 2014, when there was a very cold spell, right? If you don't remember, please go back and check. Do not panic. You know it is in the first para. Just go there and check. Okay. Right now, I'm not showing you that going back and forth, but you should always go and check when you are not sure. That's it. Okay. When the US and Canada complained of extreme weather? Not really. India, because it is a very specific period that they have spoken about, not a general complaint of cold weather. India started experiencing a cold wave. It's not about India at all. The US suffered from a frigid spell in 2014 is the right answer, right? A bomb cyclone battered the US East Coast. That comes later. That this polar vortex was also responsible for the bomb cyclone, but that is not why the media started using this term. And none of the above. So the right answer is option 3. Okay. So we had just 3 questions there based on this very long passage. So that is why I said do not waste too much time on reading the passage. You can run through the passage very quickly. Okay. Now let us take a look at our second passage. I want to give you some variety. The first one was related to climate change, environment. Now here we have a different topic which I hope you will find interesting. Let us see. If you despise painting, which is the sole imitator of all visible works of nature, you will certainly despise a subtle invention which brings philosophy to bear on the nature of all forms, sea and land, plants and animals, grasses and flowers, which are enveloped in shade and light. Truly, painting is a science, the true born child of nature, said Leonardo da Vinci. Okay, fine. Despise means to hate. So, this is Da Vinci's description of painting, and he calls it a subtle invention which brings philosophy to bear on the nature of all forms. Okay, so he says that art or painting is a philosophical take on everything in nature. Fine. Assuming that painting should be representational, that is, that art should be, as Da Vinci puts it, the sole imitator of all visible works of nature, he tried to clarify and make explicit. Explicit means clear. The postulates required. Postulates here means the rules, you can say. Okay. For achieving maximum authenticity in one's painting. So, authenticity means honesty or being genuine. Here, Da Vinci said that art should be representational. That is, it should imitate nature. Okay. So, he talked of various aspects to be kept in mind for achieving authenticity in painting. In his detailed writings about perspective and light, he tried to set down propositions which, if followed, would yield paintings that looked as real as possible. A particular painting, then, was a derivation from these postulates and can be judged. So, derivation is something derived from or something that is based on or something which follows these rules and can be judged for the degree of its consistency with the rules that Da Vinci claimed to be following. Okay, so if you look at a painting and if you compare it with these rules and see the extent to which the painting follows these rules, we can understand with its degree of authenticity or the quality of that painting if you go by Da Vinci's definition. Okay. In principle, however, this exercise can be carried out in most cases, since one can, often with considerable accuracy, infer the postulates that guided the work of a given artist from a knowledge of when and where he lived, with whom he studied, and what art he admired. So, he is saying that it is possible to do this exercise of comparing the postulates with the work because often one can infer the postulates or the rules that guided the work of a given artist, any artist, based on when and where he lived, with whom he studied. So, based on the circumstances of his life. Of course, Da Vinci made the same mistake that we ascribed to Euclid. namely believing that there is a fill in the blank question there, or at most in need of minor modifications that would bring them in line with what would make for maximum authenticity in one's paintings. So we are not very sure what mistake Euclid made here, because something is missing, but that's okay. Da Vinci once again then believed himself to be discovering rather than inventing and constructing. Okay, so probably that is part of the mistake, right? That Da Vinci thought he was discovering, and then it says once again, maybe Da Vinci's belief here was similar to that of Euclid's belief. Euclid is known as the father of geometry. He was a philosopher, mathematician, etc. The same conclusion is evident when we consider the composition of music. For a long time, it was believed in the Western world that certain principles concerning admissible harmonic combinations and certain rules of counterpoint provided an intuitively appropriate aesthetic basis for writing music. So this is the mistake basically. Da Vinci also thought that there are certain rules that you can use to judge painting. Similarly, in music also, it was believed that certain principles could be applied, right, to assess the aesthetics of music. Aesthetics is the beauty. With respect to harmonic postulates, see, when you see expressions like this, just don't worry. You are getting the overall idea of the passage, right? That is all you need. Okay. It was assumed that the musical interval of the third constituted the basic building block in terms of which chords should be constructed. That chords built in terms of thirds generated maximum aesthetic pleasure. What is this concept of thirds? We don't need to know. Okay, I'm not explaining all these technical concepts because then you will feel, array, we need to know all these things in order to answer the questions. No. Whatever it is, you don't, if you know it, good for you. If you know music, you know of the concept of rhythm and the intervals between notes and all these things, it is good. But you don't need to know. That is the point I'm trying to make. So, when you read a passage, don't panic when you see things you do not know. They are not going to ask you what is the interval of the third. They'll never ask you that. Okay? Fine. So, it was assumed in music, it was believed that chords, musical chords, okay, in any instrument, which was built in terms of thirds or intervals of thirds, generated maximum aesthetic pleasure. Aesthetic pleasure here is the beauty of music. To be avoided or at best to be introduced by the interval of the fourth was considered, presumably on intuitive grounds, to be displeasing to the ear. So, any interval which was not third, so the fourth, for example, was considered not very aesthetic or pleasing. The intuitive basis of such a decision is hard to accept, however, when one considers that the reverse set of harmonic assumptions regarding the use of thirds and fourths can be found exemplified in the music of India, where the fourth is considered a pleasing musical interval while the third is not. So, just understand that while in Western music, the third is considered more aesthetic than fourth, whatever third and fourth are. In Indian music, the fourth interval is considered more pleasing than the third. Okay. So also, recent developments in Western music have included the emergence of new styles. Even in Western music, there are new styles that have emerged. For instance, Schoenberg, Western composer, also emphasized fourths rather than thirds. So, this is the similarity between Schoenberg and Indian music, right? He also emphasized fourths rather than thirds. Schoenberg reached his decision to emphasize on fourths something, now there's something missing there, that's why you have a number there, status to all the 12 tones that lie within an octave. Okay. He found that if one traversed the keyboard in fourths, traversed is travelled or crossed. one would touch the 12 different tones contained in an octave and then return to the point of origin without having touched any tone more than once. This is the reason why Schoenberg thought that this fourth was more aesthetic. Okay. If there is a question on this, we will come back and check because it is difficult to remember all these things. Such an outcome led Schoenberg to conclude that the fourth, hence, would be the proper interval on which he should center his attention. Okay, that's it. Fine. So, we are talking of, in this passage, we talk of aesthetics. Leonardo da Vinci believed that there are certain rules of aesthetics. So, we talked about that in the beginning. In the context of painting, then we said that probably this is not so, right? And then we looked at the example of music where in some parts of the world, the third interval is considered aesthetic, but in parts like India, it is not so. And in it also depends on the composer because there are people like Schoenberg who believe that fourth was more aesthetic. Okay. Shall we look at the questions? Fine. Now, according to Leonardo da Vinci, a painting or any form of art should be totally creative. What has Leonardo da Vinci said? He has said that it should imitate nature. It should be an imitation of nature, right? Keep that in mind. Or if you want, you go to the first part of the passage and check what all da Vinci has said about art. Okay, he hasn't said it should be totally creative, should follow a particular tradition. Well, here you have to be careful. Did he talk about following a particular tradition or ritual? No, he talked of following postulates or rules. That is not the same as tradition. Okay, should be instructive or educational? No, should try to imitate nature? Yes. Should be admired by everyone. He has not talked of the audience at all. Okay. So, option 4 is the right answer. Now, let's look at the next question. Yeah. The degree of consistency with which an artist follows his own postulates. Okay. What has the author talked about in this context? Can be judged from his paintings. Yes, it says when we look at the paintings of a particular artist, we can make out how much the person has, what do we say, how much has he followed his own rules, because we can understand from his background and from his life story, we can understand what his rules are, and then when we look at his painting, we can understand the extent to which he has followed these rules. So, this is correct, but let us look at the other options also. Can make a painting look aesthetic. That is just the opinion of some people like Da Vinci. You can't say that that is a fact, right? Will make his work unique and distinctive. That has not been mentioned. Can make him systematic and methodical. It hasn't been mentioned. Works as a guideline for critics while judging his work. The degree of, it works as a guideline for some critics who believe in this, but it can be judged from his paintings is what has been mentioned in the passage. So, this is the right answer, because 5 is also not universal. It is only for people who believe in this particular postulate. Okay. A knowledge of the place of birth of an artist, his friends and his personal interests can help one. We saw that knowing his circumstances will help us understand what postulates or principles guide him. So, let us take a look. In finding out the date of birth of the artist with considerable accuracy, this has not been mentioned at all. Far-fetched. We call such options far-fetched, totally irrelevant. In judging the degree of creativity of the artist, not really, right? In understanding the postulates that guided him, yes, that is what is mentioned in the passage. In judging the character and behavior of the artist out of context, in finding similarities and differences between him and other artists of the same period, not mentioned in the passage. Okay, so option 3 is the right answer. Next question. Both Da Vinci and Euclid believed that. Okay, what did both of them believe? So for this, let us go back to the passage and see. Okay, what did both of them believe? Euclid, namely believing that something in need of minor modifications that would bring them in line with what would be. Okay, so it is about authenticity, right? Being authentic. So let us see what is the closest. Okay. Yeah. An artist has ideas within him which have only to be discovered. There we saw that Da Vinci also thought he was only discovering certain things. And what is this ideas within? Ideas within refers to authenticity. Since a part of the passage is missing, we can only make some inferences here. But yes, it refers to authenticity, right? Okay, let us look at all the options. An artist invents new ideas and thus becomes creative. No, Da Vinci thought he was only discovering things, not inventing. The postulates of any artist have to be modified from time to time. No, at the most with minor modifications is what is mentioned. He didn't say that we need to modify the postulates. Modifications in one postulates bring maximum authenticity in one's paintings. No, modification is only when it is required. The postulates of an artist are like the postulates of a mathematician. No, both of them did not believe that. It is the author who has made this comparison between Da Vinci and Euclid. So among the options, definitely it is option 1. Okay, in this question, we, since the answer is not directly given in the passage, we can pick the answer through elimination, right? Because none of these other options are true according to the passage. So one which is the closest to the author's perspective is the answer. Okay, this is how we make proper inferences based on the author's perspective. For a long time, the principles and the rules of music in the Western world were. Okay, what have they mentioned about the principles and rules of music? They have mentioned that it's based on intuition. If you do not remember, please go and check. Okay, formed by great musicians. Passage does not mention that. So for these kind of questions, wherever they have spoken of Western music, you just go and check that part. You will get the answer. Intuitive, yes, based on intuition, yes. Written down for a particular patterned group of audience, not mentioned. Followed by all the great singers, not mentioned. Explained to the listeners, not mentioned that it was explained to the listeners. So intuitive is the right answer. Okay. Next question. According to the traditional Western music world, it was assumed that maximum aesthetic pleasure could be attained if the interval is third, right? An interval of 3s or third interval. So the chords are played harmoniously. Well, for playing the chords harmoniously, they were saying that the interval should be of thirds. So the musical notes are based on classical tradition. What tradition? That is the question, not classical tradition in general. A musician practiced his notes well before playing it in front of the audience, not mentioned. The notes have an interval at every third block. So when they say interval of third, we can infer that this is what they are talking about. And the notes are renewed after every fourth block. No, interval of third. So this is the answer. Okay, now you have to read the passage and answer the questions. vocabulary question here actually. The last question is a vocabulary question. So, derivation. Okay, you saw some blanks in the passage. There were some questions based on that which we have not presented in this particular session. Okay, we will have more sessions on reading comprehension where we present more question types. Here it is a vocabulary question. Select the word which is most similar to the word given in bold as used in the passage. Derivation we saw. Okay, derivation is something derived from or something that follows. Okay, so origin, no, derivation is not the origin. Cause, no, it is the effect rather, not the cause. Sequel, sequel is something that comes after, right? Something that follows, so that should be the answer. Termination means end, no. Review also not relevant, hence sequel is the right answer. Okay. So, this brings us to the end of this little discussion on reading comprehension. Do keep practicing. Please read newspaper editorials and articles on various topics regularly. Okay, try to read with a timer at a reading speed of 200 words per minute. If you can do a word count and set a timer, that will help you push yourself to improve your speed. Also, whenever you see new words, please write them down in a notebook. You check the meaning in the dictionary, write down the meaning in a notebook. Keep revising this from time to time. All these will help your reading comprehension. Okay. So, for more such very useful videos, please follow us on all our channels, that is Telegram, YouTube, Instagram and Facebook. Okay, the links are given below in the description box. We offer videos not only related to bank exams, but also all the other government exams, SSCCGLE, insurance, railway, a variety of government exams. Okay, and please do remember that T.I.M.E has classroom coaching, which it is renowned for. So, if you want to attend our classes, do visit your nearest T.I.M.E center. You are always welcome. And if you want to check out our online courses, you can enroll at the link is given here. Okay, fine. So, all the best, dear students. Keep practicing. Thank you.